So you want to run a 100-mile ultra, but how do you do it? What are the steps to getting from not in very good shape to get into good enough shape that you can keep moving and keep running for 100 miles? Well, today in this video, hopefully I'm going to give you a few different tips and tricks that I used to having gone from never run a marathon to completing my first 100-mile ultra. Tip number one is to think about where you are at, to think about your level of fitness so that you can create the best plan possible. If you're someone who currently can't even run 10 miles in a week, that's where you need to start your training plan, and perhaps your 100-mile goal is a year's worth of training away. If you've already run a marathon or you've already run half marathons, your training is going to look a little bit different. Now, I'm not saying to the 5-kilometer racer that you can't run 100 miles, because of course you can, but your training plan is going to be a bit longer than someone who can already run a marathon. I would go out on a whim and say if you've already run a marathon at an okay time, you're probably not that far off ultra marathon fitness, to be honest. It's just about getting more miles under your feet. So find a correct training plan. I'm going to attach or share my exact 33-week training plan that I followed to go from 30 miles to 75 plus miles a week, and therefore completing my 100-mile to this video. So you can follow that exactly if you're in a similar position to me, or you can make adjustments or send me a message and I'll try and help you out the best I can with a training plan for you. Tip number two is to be realistic with the shape that you're in, and I mean that in the literal sense in this regard. So if you are 100 kilograms or heavier than that, there's a good chance that a big portion of your running is going to suffer simply because of your weight. Now, I'm not saying that you are unfit if you're 100 plus kilograms. That's not what I'm saying at all. However, running that amount of mileage and running for 100 miles is less about your cardiovascular fitness as much as it's about your body being able to cope with the trauma that you're going to put it through for running for 24 hours plus. So to trim down that weight is going to be massively beneficial. You can do this super easily. Just type in on one of those calculators online, how much weight do I need to lose? Or I can give you a good generalization. If you're doing about 2,500 calories a day and you're training a good amount, and then you weigh yourself at the end of the week and you've lost a bit of weight, a safe and healthy amount of weight, keep doing what you're doing. If you've lost too much weight, eat a little bit more, and so on. It doesn't need to be as complicated as people make it. The next tip is going to be thinking about your body and how it functions in terms of hydration and how it functions in terms of nutrition and what you can consume. People often say with ultra marathons that it's more of an eating contest than it is a running contest. I can tell you for sure that very good runners are very good at the races, but lots of people also definitely do and have suffered from not being able to eat or eating poorly during the race. I probably fall into that category of someone who wasn't necessarily that good at eating on the run, is the truth, but I tried to find ways of getting around that. A good tip would be to do a sweat test. A sweat test is simply weigh yourself naked ideally before an hour run for an hour, weigh yourself afterwards, look at how much weight you've lost, and you should be able to go onto an online calculator and work out your sodium intake and things like that. In terms of nutrition, you need to be practicing your nutrition on your training runs. So if you're doing a 30-kilometer training run, even if you wouldn't necessarily eat that much or you're used to eating gels and things for marathons and such, this is where you need to start thinking about eating solids. Because the truth is, if you have 20, 40 plus gels over the course of a 100-mile race, I promise you they flow through you. And when things are flowing through you, and it's probably going to happen anyway, it's just not ideal. It means more pausing, more breaks, more inconvenience in general. Sometimes you'll find the things you eat are absolutely miserable. So you'll be like, oh, I thought I liked this food. You might not like it when you run. And so there'll be certain foods that your body wants to consume and finds easy to consume, and other things that you'll be like, absolutely not. And you have to find that out for yourself. The things that people tell you to eat on the internet might be good, but you have to try them. You should never, ever, ever try them just on the day, because you don't know how your body's going to react. And you almost certainly won't even know how your body's going to react on the day, because the likelihood is you haven't tried eating that sort of thing after 18 hours of constant movement. So try out your food constantly when you're training, see what works. And when you get to race day, do the same thing. And the same goes for the hydration. If you're a bigger person, you're probably going to need to hydrate more and fuel more. If you're lighter, a bit less, but maybe you're a really sweaty person, These are all considerations that you have to take into account when planning for the race. Okay, on to everybody's favorite bit, equipment. What stuff do you need? Now, lots of races will have standards or they'll have necessary pieces of equipment. So lots of that will be like a certain amount of hydration. It will be emergency blankets. It might be a first aid kit. It might be torch. It might be spare batteries. So depending on the race you're doing, they'll have different things they want you to have. And therefore, depending on the race you're doing, you might need to be able to store more things. So I'm going to say something I don't like telling people to get straight away, because you don't need it straight away if you're not running that far. But a good hydration vest will go a long way in terms of just storing the food, storing all your, maybe a rain jacket or something that you need in there. It's a really good thing to buy, and buying a better one will last you much longer than a bad one. And because if you buy a cheap one, I promise you will just throw it away, because it will take a beating over doing thousands of miles of training and then hundreds of miles in the race. And when you get to the race, you just want it to work. So water bottles and things like that, buy those with that. Now, in terms of shoes, you're probably going to go through at least a couple of pairs during your training, probably, just because you won't have done the mileage you've done before. Now you're doing tons of mileage, and they will take a beating, particularly if you're doing trail stuff, you're doing road stuff, and different shoe brands have basically longer lives to them. So something like a Hoka, fantastic shoe, like the Speedgo, I ran a portion of mine in the Hoka Speedgo, excellent. But in my experience as someone a bit heavier, they tend to just wear out a bit quicker. So be prepared to have a bigger turnover of shoes. I ran my race in a Nike Zagama, which for me worked perfectly. With shoes are harder to try, because you don't know what state your feet are going to be in your shoes after miles and miles and miles and miles and miles and miles. So you have to be tactical with the shoes you buy. So possibly don't stray away from the brands that you know. And if you're going to expend lots of money on shoes, I would strongly suggest going to a shoe shop, a running shoe shop that analyzes your gait and looks at what shoes are probably going to be appropriate for you. I don't know of anyone who has done a 100-miler who hasn't had some sort of blistering or anything like that. So that's just part of it. So you need to find as comfortable a shoe as possible for that. In terms of all the other gear, shorts, whatever, just make sure you wear stuff that doesn't chafe and you'll be fine. Have enough warm stuff, have enough stuff for if it is hot and you want to keep cool. Ultimately, you'll be fine in kind of the clothes you wear, as long as they're comfortable and you're not chafed and you're not feeling miserable after running for 4-6 hours, because you've probably got another 20 ahead of you. Now, moving on to the last thing, it's race day, it's upon us. How do we go about getting over the line? Now, you can be as prepared as you want. You can plan things as much as you want, and maybe on race day it will go perfectly and smoothly, but the likelihood is it won't, and it will throw up all sorts of challenges and things you didn't expect to deal with. Maybe you'll have awful blisters, maybe you'll cramp early, maybe you'll bonk, maybe you'll have an actual injury, maybe you'll get over hot. There's so many things that could go wrong during that period of time. The most important thing you can go into it with is simply the mindset of, I'm just going to keep moving. Keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. If that even means walking, you're probably going to walk a portion of it anyway. Speed walking, it means just moving, relentless forward momentum despite anything else going on. And if you enter into that mindset, the other bits and pieces, they just become part of it. They don't become, oh no, this is, worth quitting for. They're just things happening. Your feet are probably going to get in a bit of a state, and at some point you're probably going to mess up your nutrition a little bit because it's your first time ever doing one of these races, but you'll be fine. Is the truth to this, is you will be fine. Obviously, if things go awfully wrong, take yourself off. There's no shame in withdrawing from these races. Most people do, is the other truth. But enter it into with that mindset of like, I'm just going to keep moving forward. Keep eating, keep drinking. If you're really uncomfortable in your clothes, change your clothes. Look after and get on top of your feet. So by that I mean is if you feel there is some rubbing, sort it out. Plasters, blisters, plasters, get on top of it. If you feel like you've got some chafing, low down, high up, wherever it is, get on top of it. Anti-chafe stuff, get that stuff on there. But more than anything, just be willing to deal with what the event is. It's not particularly normal to run for 24 hours, 20 hours, 30 hours for some people. just go with it, go with the process, enjoy doing it with other people, finding paces, running with other people, doing the race. Just go with it bit by bit, and you'll be fine. I know that I could say, do exactly this, do exactly that, and that's often what lots of people would like. But the truth is, with this sort of event, it has to be personal to you. What I ate won't necessarily work for you. How I ran won't necessarily work for you. Your training time between now and that race is all about the conquest of discovering what works for you. Try everything out. There is no wrong answers.